Hey everybody, I'm Will, and this is Downtime Activities, and this is part 3 of my character series, where it was originally going to be part of my sort of ongoing writing series, which is just about getting people started in sort of writing and giving some advice and motivation. But Erickson and I quickly realized that characters are kind of too complex of a category by themselves to just do one video on. So I'm breaking it up into a whole series going over aspects of character creation and storytelling and what makes characters sort of work and how to do different types of characters well. We've previously gone over some basics as well as flaws and ideals, the weaknesses your characters have and what's really sort of driving them forward and the hills they'll choose to die on. And we're doing something somewhat related with this video, which is whether the character is unguided or if they have some sort of long-term goal that they're chasing. So let's go ahead and get into it. This topic is going to be an interesting one because, by and large, it is heavily weighted in one direction, but it is worth talking about both sides of this. Most characters are going to be chasing a goal of some kind, and they should be. It's really an excellent idea to ensure that your characters have very fleshed out goals attached to them, even if the character doesn't know exactly what they are yet. Let's just go ahead and get into it and you'll probably see what I mean. We've already been over a few basics, and we've covered flaws and ideals, the things holding a character back, and the things they put up on a pedestal or hold sacred. The discussion of flaws and ideals is going to determine a lot of the personality of the character, and heavily influence the decisions they make as they're presented with the various opportunities and challenges of the story. Deciding whether they are unguided or chasing a goal gives another layer to this, and helps to determine directly how a character is interacting with the story and what, if anything, is driving them through it. This is especially helpful for tabletop RPG characters, where the story is often a little broader and interspersed with other events, quests, and interactions that may not be bearing down upon the core story. Making a character that is chasing a goal of some kind, or several goals, gives a core drive behind the character's actions, and should be tied back into those flaws and ideals we've talked about before. A character like this is turning away from some things, or chasing others because of those goals, and it is the fulfillment of those goals, or in letting go of them, that the character changes and grows. On the other side of things, a truly unguided character is more just freewheeling their way through the party, unguided by personal goals and simply going with the flow. Their story is more one of just experiencing the events as they pass by, perhaps changing with them, but not actively seeking anything long-term. It's hard to play a truly unguided character, or indeed write one, and if you're going to attempt it, the best middle ground is not to be completely nihilistic with your character, but being more of a short-term focused character. By and large, you're going to get more mileage out of a character that has some sort of goal they're chasing. This doesn't have to be a particularly grand goal, or even a goal tied to the main story, but it serves to guide the character's actions and decisions, at least in certain situations. If your character is hunting for someone, getting close to finding that person, or to finding clues about that person, is going to change how that character acts. They might well risk losing out on other opportunities, even story-important ones, in order to track down those leads. Having to strike that balance between their own goals and the goals of the party or the world is what makes that character interesting. And the best characters will often give up their own goals, at least eventually, for the sake of the greater good. Goals certainly don't need to be at odds with the main story or the goals of the party either. In fact, good enough character goals can drive entire campaigns. A charismatic party member on a lifelong quest to find the gemstone containing the soul of their brother could easily be an entire story on its own, and that character building up a band of adventurers around themselves to help on this quest allows for the rest of the playgroup to bolt their own character's goals and personalities onto it. There's also no need for goals to be specific or even truly attainable. Goals can be as general as something like striving to bring justice to the world. This isn't something that's possible overall, and it's not even close to specific, but it gives the player guidance in their decisions and helps to drive at least their story forward. It is an easy way for the game master or author to get the characters involved in the events of the story or in the side quests. The more specific the goal, the more specific use the game master or author can make use of it. The more general the goal, the more often it will likely come up. There's another important point here that I want to touch on in relation to this. I've mentioned a couple times now goals driving the story forward, and I've already talked about how goals can be set at odds to the main story. You do need to be careful about this. It's best if a character's goals are aligned with the main story in some way, or if the character at least has some investment in the main story. A character too at odds with the main story is going to be jarring, and having goals somewhat closely aligned to the main story, or at least aspects of it, helps the author or game master drive that character forward, and it helps story beats land with greater weight. The character that is hunting the man who killed their son and eventually discovers that it's the lieutenant of the main villain is going to have a lot more buy-in for that boss fight, and defeating them is going to be a powerful moment. These storytelling moments are the main reason for goal-driven characters. They provide that storytelling foundation, help to influence moment-to-moment decisions, and help story beats land with greater impact. On the other side of things, and much more difficult to pull off, are unguided characters. Characters with no true goals, just sort of freewheeling through the world in the story. These work better as NPCs in most cases, or side characters if you're writing a book, and they really should be rare. I just mentioned that characters who are at odds with the main story often feel jarring, and the characters who go along with the main story despite having no drive to do so are jarring in the same way. You never want the audience or other players at the table to stop and ask themselves, why are you even here? These characters need to ride a fine line. They have to have some buy-in to the story or the party itself without having those goals that they're constantly hunting. Just because a character doesn't have any goals doesn't necessarily mean that they're unmotivated or don't have any ideals. It simply means that there is nothing they're chasing or seeking to accomplish. An unmotivated character really has no place in a tabletop game, since characters need to be motivated, at least at a base level, in order to do literally anything. An unguided character might wander aimlessly or raid dungeons just for something to do, without any real use for the money. An unmotivated character never leaves their home and doesn't actually go out adventuring. It is possible, though sort of a cheat, to do all of this in a sort of short-term way. The character has goals, but they're short-term, fleeting, or entirely in the moment. Their goal in any given moment might just be to survive, or they might just stick with the party out of loyalty, but they're not embarking upon grand long-term plans. They're not the type of character to actively seek out the main villain out of a desire to see justice done. If they're involved at all, it's going to be because they're just tagging along with the other characters on their quest. If you use the classic 3x3 alignment system, this fits less lawful characters better, but of course, chaotic characters are just as likely to have long-term goals and to be guided by ideals. They'll just be a little more flexible in these. Lawful characters are going to be more rigid in their approach to their goals, and their goals themselves are probably going to fit within this alignment. I really think that by and large, it's going to be easier and far better to have long-term goals, attainable or not. You'll get more story investment this way, and story moments will land with greater impact. Cool moments feel less interesting if the character doesn't have any buy-in to them, and emotional moments will be less impactful if the character is just sort of there. Attachment to the character and investment in their backstory makes events far more interesting and far weightier in general, and goals feed directly into this. It makes characters feel more complex and alive, especially if their goals are interesting, varied, or unique. With good goals driving characters forward, all a game master or author needs to do is give light taps in one direction or another to help steer the story forward to a satisfying conclusion. Well, that has been part 3 of the character series. I hope there was some useful information here. I know it's geared a little bit more towards tabletop RPG players and not necessarily authors, but I think that's just kind of the nature of this particular piece of character building. If you're interested in this type of stuff, we have a lot of related content. In particular, I would check out our bonus action series where Matt and I just sit down and have the conversations we were already having, but with a little bit more guidance and sort of tailored towards specific topics about storytelling, tabletop RPGs, whether that's running the game or sort of making character decisions. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Now go forth, slay dragons, sling spells, roll dice, and enjoy your downtime activities.